Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and finally we're here to talk about Bulldozer or AMD FX, however you would like to call it really. Many of us have been talking about it as Bulldozer for a very long time. It does feel like it's taken an age to get this far because we've all been talking about it and all the speculation and all the chat on the forums, especially where the boards were released a long time ago when originally the CPUs were due to be released. So it does seem to be, that we have been waiting for this for an age. Now I'm today going to be taking a look at the 8150, which is the top of the range of the CPUs, 8 cores. It's got a static clock of 3.6 gigahertz. It's got 2 turbo levels. It'll turbo up to 3.9, but it'll also go up to 4.2 as well, and that does it all by itself depending on the load. But there's obviously a lot of other CPUs that they've released. Now they've got 3 different types, and the first number in the name denotes the amount of cores that there is. 8150 is the 8 series, there's an 8120, then they've got a 6 variant and a 4 variant. So we've got quad cores, hex cores and octa cores. And they are the first octa-core mainstream processors to be released. So you've got to give them their dues for that. They're also, when you look at the prices, it's a bit varied at the moment. UK prices, which is all I've been kind of privileged to have been given by AMD in time for the launch. The 8150s kind of a bit varied. The average price really, or the price that most of the retailers have gone with, is £219. Aria in the UK have waded straight in with £190 price, which when you consider that's a 30 quid job, they've done a fairly good job there. I'm not going to talk too much about my thoughts and performance at the moment, but the other CPUs, they stepped down from that down to about 150. So I think it was 150 was the lowest I saw. But 190 for the octa-core, which is the top of the range, is a very, very aggressive price. Puts it right in the kind of very much beats the 2600K, but a little bit more expensive than 2500K. But that's price-wise, not performance-wise, because we're going to talk about performance more in a bit. Now, it is a brand new architecture that they've brought us to the table. Now, I'm not going to talk to you in about all the ins and outs of a dog's bum about the architecture, but it is the Phenom stroke Athlon and all that kind of, I think it was called the K2 architecture of old. It's been about for an immensely long time. AMD have been sat on that for years and just kept kind of refining it and trying to retune it, which is one of the reasons why they've always been having to keep ahead with the cores. Now with this, it's an all-new architecture, as I said previously, and basically what you've got is 4 pairs of cores, and what they're calling them modules, and each of the modules has got 2 cores, its own level of L2 cache, 2 meg of L2 cache. Actually, I'm looking because I've actually got the architecture picture to the side of me, and you've basically got the cores, then the level 2 cache kind of in the middle, so the cores are all spread right out to the outside, and then you've got the L3 cache through the middle of that. And I'm not going to go into too much about it because I really don't really want to go into that kind of level of technical detail. There are 125 watt processors anyway, and I've already said about the 3.6 stock speed of this one with a 3.9 kind of initial turbo level, but it will go all the way up to 4.2 on its own. So the clock levels for a standard core, for a standard CPU, are amazing. But one thing you guys have got to realise, now I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to the converted, but I need to explain because not everyone knows, just because the clock speed says it's 4.2 doesn't necessarily mean that it will be quicker than a different CPU from Intel, for argument's sake, at 4 gigahertz, because they're different chips. That's just the speed that processor is running at. You can't say, for argument's sake, that a 4 gigahertz Intel processor will be slower than a 4.2 or a 4.4 gigahertz AMD processor. Sadly, it doesn't work like that, and it's exactly the same with graphics cards, so you need to be bearing this in mind as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into some testing, and I'll show you the benchmarks that we're going to be running. Now, I'm going to run all of these benchmarks at stock. I'll talk to you some about the overclocking later on as well, but the bench rig that we're going to be using is an AX 1200 watt from Corsair. You've then got a GTX 570 from NVIDIA, and I've not done that to annoy AMD. It's purposely because in the original reviews for the 1155, so the 2500K and the 2600K, we used a 570. So by using the same graphics card, we're going to be able to directly compare them. The board, as supplied by AMD, is an Asus Crosshair 5. I've got the Noctua NHD14 cooler on there. And then I've also got, I will get my words out, I've got 4 gig of, I'm really losing my words today, it's where I've not done these videos for a little bit. I've got 4 gig of Mushkin Redline RAM on there. The reason why I use the Redline is just because it's quite tight latency, so I can play around with the memory speeds, and it also does go up above the CPU's rated maximum of 1866 megahertz for the memory. Now that's pretty good because all the AMDs of old really struggled once you got above 1600 megahertz. So the fact that this natively supports 1866 is brilliant because that's obviously a big step forward. But again, we'll talk more about memory overclocking and CPU overclocking in a bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into mainly CPU benchmarks. I'll do a few 3D benchmarks like 3D Mark, but I'm not going to do any necessary games testing because you don't just sit in there watching frames per second. That's mainly going to be graphics card territory. So I'll do a selection of, like I said, the CPU benchmarks, some easy just click run benchmarks for you. But if you want to see any of these results in the graphs, like I said, go to the review underneath from OC3D. But we're 7 minutes in already and I've not even run a benchmark yet. So I'm going to shush my mouth and get everything open for you and ready. Right then guys, the results are in. Now I've opened up this side of the graph to make things a little bit easier for you to see. Now the pink here is the i7 950. The blue is a 2500K. And then the 3 results above, the green and the 2 reds, are both the 8150. Now it's just results that have been run at different times. These are ones that I've done and other people have done, and they're starting to filter in. But basically, we can see that with the Drystone results, the 2500K, sorry, because this is a 25. It's ever so slightly in front. The 950 is behind, so you can see that the octa-cores there, definitely quicker than the old i7 stuff, but not as quick as the new i5 stuff. Now, when we have a look further down, you can see that it goes a little bit the other way. You've got the 950 at the bottom, then you've got the 2500K, and then you've got the octa-cores there. So we've got 15% loss with the 2500K, which is, fairly surprising. But the octa-cores are actually just upon on par really with the old 950. Now don't forget the 950 was 4 cores with 4 virtual threads, so it kind of puts them in the same sort of territory anyway. Now, I'm not going to do any more of these tests because obviously they will bore you silly. But just to read it out, the aggregate arithmetic performance was 84 GPOS. Drystone was 106.48 GIPS, and then the Whetstone was 66.28. Again, Sandra is available for download online, so you can compare your own CPU to these tests if you want. Now, the results that I'm going to do now, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3D Mark 11 and Vantage, and we'll do P-score for both, and then an X for 11 and a H for Vantage, and then I'll also do a PC Mark 7 run And then after that, I'll also do some Heaven runs as well. So yeah, stay tuned for more benchmarks. Right then guys, we've got 3D Mark 11P here, 5,179. And then we've got 3D Mark Vantage here of 22,053, and that's with an 18,558 GPU and a 50,687 CPU. Don't forget we have got PhysX enabled with this because we're using a PhysX enabled graphics card, but also we've done that so that you can compare this with all the other results that we've done in the past. Obviously, like I said, you can see the results all together in big graphs as a part of the main review, but I will go over comparisons at the end. And so far on the CPU, with it at stock, we've had a max CPU temperature on a couple of the cores of 34 degrees. Now I'm going to run extreme on 11, and because I've not got the patch on Vantage, I'm going to run high on Vantage, but we'll let those get on with that, and then yeah, in about 10-15 minutes my time, 2 seconds your time, I'll be back with the results. Right then guys and girlies, 3D Mark 11 X score 1720, 1720. And then over on to 3D Mark Vantage, we've got the H score is 16035. That's a GPU score of 14310 and the CPU score again of 50595. Again, don't forget that's because we've got PhysX on because of the graphics card. And so far we've had a maximum temperature of 35. Don't forget that's because it's going up and down all over the place, not necessarily sitting at its maximum clock. And we're also on the stock voltage as well. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to run some Unigine, but I'm going to open it quickly in front of you. It's an open and run. I'm not going to change any of the settings whatsoever. Literally I'm going to click run. Once it's opened, I will start the benchmark off and I will bring you back when we've got some results. Right then. Heaven, as you saw before, run FPS 45.3. That gave us a score of 1140. Minimum frames per second was 24.6. Maximum frames per second was 115.3. As you can see, all the settings and everything below, we saw all that previously anyway. Don't forget for extended testing and other like graphs and all the comparisons and everything, you can go to the Overclock 3D review below. I know I've said that loads of times now, so I'm sorry, but it's time now for me to get moved on from this. As you can see, we've had a maximum temperature there of 34, but I'm going to talk to you now about the overclocking. So I'm going to zoom the camera out a little bit. There we go. Right, now I'm just going to dig deep into my reviews folder because I screenshot everything. Now I'm just going to find the Bulldozer overclock. Now we've got an immense amount of overclocking stuff on this. Now I managed to get 2000 memory stable. That was with the red line. Now the red line I know does 2000 anyway because I've done that with 1366, but sadly I didn't have a 2133 kit to be able to push even further. But I managed to get 2000 stable, and that was bench stable as well, so happy as Larry with that. So we finally got an AMD that can overclock the memory beyond 1600 and pretty much hold it there. Now I did a selection of the other stuff, and I've got to admit that the CPU Northbridge scores, if I show you up in this top corner, where's CPU Northbridge? Oh, I forgot. There, Northbridge speed down here. Basically, the CPU Northbridge score that I got was about 2600. Now that's not a massive increase from what it was before, but even with immense volts, I couldn't get this up any further. Now this could be still be a board problem. Also could be a CPU problem because I've not tested enough of these yet to be able to tell. We're still in the early days to be able to pick and choose. Obviously when I do another board, because so far the only 990FX I've done has been the CH5, so we'll be able to go further than that. Now the HT speed that I managed to get up in this top corner, quite strange, it was 2600 as well. Again, didn't really matter what volts you put through it or anything like that. Couldn't really get it much higher, which again I was a bit disappointed with. Now, overclock wise, I did manage to get in, this is the score that I did most of my benching with, was kind of around and abouts, was kind of teetering between 4.5 and 4.6 anyway, which again is not a bad score at all. Now you can get, I got 5 gigahertz as you can see with this screenshot. Now this was 5 gigahertz I managed to get with 8 cores and 8 threads, but it wasn't bench stable, and I used the AMD overdrive to get there. Basically, like I said, I was able to go in there, change all the cores, bosh, done, but it wasn't bench stable. To get further than that, and this was my maximum clock as well, I did manage to get 5.2. But the trouble with 5.2 was I had to disable 3 of the modules. Bearing in mind you've got 2 cores per module, so it was down to being a dual core. Now you may think this is a bit mad, but AMD actually in the original briefing for Bulldozer, when they told us all about it, you know, its capabilities, them trying to sell it to us basically and give us all the ins and outs, to get 5 gigahertz, they actually told us to disable 3 of the modules. So they were telling us to do that just to get 5 gigahertz. Now, I'd kind of seen 5 gigahertz on air as being quite some selling point for quite some time. Now, when I was running 4.6, as you saw before, as a bench clock with Prime, when I was running it, let me find the file again. There it is. When I was running this, we were getting temperatures of 75 and 76 degrees. And I've got to admit, guys, the amount of heat coming out the back of the NHD14 was immense. Now, you're going to all be thinking 75, 76 degrees with an 8 core and everything like that is going to be good. And I would tend to agree with you. That's still an immensely good temperature, really, considering the clock speed. But kind of getting used to AMD's being really cool. Now, this is it overclocked. And today, with it stock, we've not seen it, as you've seen, go, it's not even got to 40. So these processors definitely, once you start to overclock them, get very warm very quickly. Bearing in mind we're on a, you know, one of the top flight air coolers here, and we've still got 75 degrees. So this isn't going to be something that you're going to be able to run with a puny air cooler or some pathetic water cooling thing. But anyway, it's definitely time now to get on with the conclusion so I can get this all wrapped up. Right then, guys, I said this quite a few times throughout the course of the video review, and that's to go and see the main bulk of graphs and all the comparisons with all the other CPUs on the main review on the Overclock 3D website. Now, as I've been doing a lot recently, I'm going to talk about an award and then do all the explanations. And sadly, I really don't feel like I can give this an award. Now, I did teeter around the kind of idea of giving it a bronze, but I'm hopefully going to be able to explain why. Now, basically, Bulldozer, we've been waiting for this for an immense amount of time. We all kind of thought it was going to be amazing. Then rumours kind of started to trickle through that it wasn't that good, and there was a lot of people kind of saying it may be, you know, a competitor for the 2600K, and they will trade blows. And then kind of rumours started saying, well, actually it was going to be more like a 2500K it would trade blows with, and it would be around 2600K money, and it was all very confusing. Then there was a lot of rumours that single-threaded performance were abysmal, and everything that's been rumoured, you know, been full of rumours, and we've not really known what was going on. Now, with my testing, I did not see at any point of time this processor being any kind of competition for the 2600K, as in it's not anywhere near the 2600K. It was readily trading blows with the 2500K of more than anything else. Now, I've got to say, it really has made me feel underwhelmed, because the old architecture was around for so long, where this was such a big new thing that I'd been working on for ages. I was expecting a humongous leap forward. Now, last year when we reviewed or was it the year before even, when we originally reviewed the first hex core, which was the 1090, we gave that a gold award, because it was a big leap forward. They'd done amazing things with that. It was, trading blows with the 950 and the 940 back then, if not beating them. It was kind of level pegging right the way through. It was amazing. Not only was it trading blows with the 950, but that kind of put it in the 870 territory as well. So it was well up there with the i7s. Now it's struggling to beat the i5s, and this is with a brand new architecture. Now, something else that I found amazingly not confusing, but the easiest way I can explain the kind of relationship between the 2500K and the 8150 is, with the 2500K you've got 4 cores, and it's almost like one Intel core is one AMD module. And obviously with the AMD modules, you've got 2 cores in there, you've got all its own L2 cache. It really is like the AMDs are running at 50% compared to the kind of similar sort of stuff with the Intels. Now, another thing that's kind of something that I really do have to discuss with you about the relationship between the 2500K and the 8150, and this is really the crucial one as far as I'm concerned, is that with the 2500K, that would be what I would consider as being like an entry-level enthusiast processor from the Intel bandwagon. So you've got a decent processor for reasonable money. You can find them in the UK now for 173 quid. So you can get them for decent money. You can get a board that'll run it easily. There's many options for memory. It doesn't really get that hot, so cooler choices are easy. Intel have made the overclocking idiot proof, so pretty much anyone can do it if you're not that clued up with it. Most decent motherboards have got a single overclock button, so you can click that, and most of those will get you up to about 4.4 gigahertz, if not more anyway. But with the AMD, to get a similar performing AMD, or do you know what I mean, something that relatively competes with it, you've got to buy the best AMD processor that they have on the market at the moment, which is the 8150. The 8150, as I said before, at Aria is going to be 190 quid, but everywhere else in the country at the time of launch, they're going to be £219. I can honestly see these prices falling on their arse when the reviews go live, because I don't think anyone out there is going to be able to scream and shout about this. Anyone that does thinks that they're doing AMD a favour when they're really not. This, I have to say, it's got to be a time for us to kind of go, what the bloody hell have you been doing for the last few months, AMD? Looking at the graphs, as a gaming processor, it's pretty good. It does pretty well, to the point where it does beat the 2500K at certain points. Certain games love it, certain games don't. But when it's with the benchmarks, even multi-threaded benchmarks, which can use all 8 of those cores, aren't really, not utilising it, but the scores just aren't that great. It's almost like the CPU doesn't know what it's meant to be doing. Whether this gets better with BIOS options, BIOS upgrades at a later date or anything like that, I don't know. But these boards have been around for so long now. We would have thought that, the boards that are there, we would have thought that the pros, the BIOSes and everything would have been better. So I'm a little bit confused with that one. And as I was kind of referring to earlier on, because I just realised I didn't finish this, and I apologise because I'm going all over the place. I said to you with the Intel that it's like a mainstream, and to get similar performance you've got to buy the best AMD. But then going back to the Intel again, what you've got to bear in mind is you buy a 2500K, you spend your money, in 6-8 months time you think to yourself, oh, I just think I deserve an upgrade. So you can go on the 2600K or the 2700K that's going to be coming up. Next year you'll have even more options, because you're going to have Ivy Bridge coming out, the possibilities of 1155 hex cores. It's going to be an immense amount of options there for you. With AMD, you've already bought the best processor. Now, AMD generally to kind of like clock speed increases and stuff like that, but I can't see there really being any viable upgrades, because with the 2500K, if you go to the 26, you get hyper threading, and the 2600K is just something that the AMD really can't touch. Now, I know I'm saying that as an upgrade option, but I'm trying to look at the grander scheme of things here and not just keep it you know, solely at the price point. But we've also got to bear in mind at the moment the AMD is actually more expensive than the 2500K, and to be perfectly honest with you, it's considerably more difficult to overclock. There's a lot of more things to kind of balance, which is good for an enthusiast, but not for someone that's, you know, not necessarily massively clued up. And AMD's strong point in the past has always been about being, you know, the budget performer. And with this, I know it's the top of the range one that they've sent me, but it's really not much of a budget performer. It really doesn't touch the 2500K. So with all these kind of new revisions and everything like that, when Intel did it with Sandy, there was a massive leap. What we've got to bear in mind is with Sandy, we had the 2600K, which was performing and on the same kind of tier as the 990X. So they've made a mainstream processor with the same performance near enough, and if not, you know, better than the old extreme absolute best £1,000 processor. So you were getting like 990X performance for a quarter of the price. And to be perfectly honest with you, probably shouldn't have been thinking around those sort of lines, but we were kind of expecting the same sort of thing from AMD. But in some of our tests, the octa-core 8150 was being beaten by the old Phenom 2 1090. And to be perfectly honest with you, I know it's not, because it's all new architecture and everything like that, but the only way I can explain the way it kind of feels is as if they've got all the Phenom bits and they've kind of swapped them around a bit and then chucked an extra couple of cores on. It's really how it feels. And yeah, it's just the architecture. We were expecting a lot bigger steps in terms of performance and you know, power efficiency and everything really, and they just don't seem to have delivered. So I'm going to be immensely, obviously I've had to record this ahead of time. I am going to be really interested to see how other people have kind of taken on these like comparisons and stuff like that. But us here at Overclock 3D, and I've spoken this through with everyone as well, shown them all the results. I've had several conversations, or rather debates, with other people in the industry that I know from CPU manufacturers and from both sides, and kind of I've had a good old conflab with a lot of them, and I can't help but feel like if this is the best they've got to offer, then they really need to go off and start again. Hopefully with the new architecture, they'll be able to progress this over time, but this is going to mean buying new CPUs and everything down the line. As things stand at the moment, my best advice for people that are looking to buy this is, if you've already got an AMD setup that's Bulldozer ready and you've got all your kit, then for the sake of buying the CPU and chucking it in your rig, I would say, yeah, brilliant, because you're not going to have to change everything else. You're not going to have to buy a new board. Get it in your rig, be happy with it. But then bear in mind that if you want to upgrade from there on, especially if you do buy the 8150, you're going to need to change, because my advice to people now would be, if you've got the money to spend on a whole new rig and you are teetering between AMD and Sandy Bridge, there is not a doubt in my mind I would be telling you to buy Sandy Bridge. And that's not because of being an Intel fanboy or anything like that. It's just because of the way the benches have gone. You have to buy the absolute cream of the crop AMD to come anywhere near the 2500K. If you buy a 2500K system, you've got CPU upgrade options, further down the line. You've got Ivy Bridge coming next year. There's going to be an immense amount of different options. AMD have just come to market with the Bulldozer kit, and it's really, this is the best they've got at the moment. There is nowhere else to go beyond this. As I said, things may change I may test a board next week, a different board, and things are completely different. But as things are with the results that we've got and everything that we've seen, we're just not that impressed with the Bulldozer stuff. So like I said, as a gaming rig, if you hate Intel, then you may get on, you know what I mean, you may be perfectly happy with it. But if it was my money and I was looking for a system that was going to be used for gaming and, you know, everything, then, and like video rendering and, you know, everything that you could do with it, all that kind of Photoshop stuff and everything, I honestly would buy Intel. And I wish, I'm saying this at the end, but I do wish this had been completely different. I wanted Bulldozer to wipe the floor with all the Intel mainstream stuff. Mainly because if AMD don't get their arse in gear, why do Intel need to try any harder? It's a bit of a tough one. If there's no competition for them, they're just kind of competing with themselves. They won't keep pushing the boundaries and bringing us new technology sooner. They'll keep delaying stuff and thinking to themselves, well, if they can't do any better, we may as well sell the old stuff for a bit longer and make a bit more money. So that's why I really wanted AMD to come to the market with an absolute, you know, a crazy CPU that overclocked, was, you know, you didn't use much power, that absolutely wiped the floor with everything. Do you know what I mean? All the 2600Ks and stuff. So then all Intel had to do was, when 2011 come out, they kind of took the performance crown back. But sadly, it's almost like AMD went in to make competition for the 2500K all along, and they've kind of settled with it. And yeah, it just makes me feel like it's almost like they didn't really try. Maybe they didn't have the money. I don't know. Maybe they've not got the technology or the, you know, the people to be able to design all this amazing stuff. Maybe Intel quite literally have bought everyone. But whoever's doing stuff AMD now, I really do think you need to go back to the drawing board, because yeah, this has left me underwhelmed. For the absolute best you've got to offer, it's not as anywhere near as good as I was expecting. So that's why we've decided not to give it an award. Now that's a big statement, and like I said, we did kind of toil over this for a while. We were at least trying to find the words to be able to give it a bronze award. But when we started writing it all out and actually comparing it to the 2500K, which is cheaper than it, it just wasn't enough for us to say about it. And when you, like I said, when you consider that one's got 4 cores and one's got 8 cores, and the 8-core one really wasn't, you know, that much further ahead, it was a strange one to say the least. So that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. I'm going to leave you guys to kind of leave me all your comments and everything below. Don't forget to subscribe and comment and all that kind of stuff like we always do. But yeah, that is the AMD Bulldozer octa-core 8150 review. Now hopefully, as long as AMD don't hate me too much, I am going to be doing hex core stuff, because now I've seen this, I actually want to put the new hex core up against the old hex core on the same motherboard with all the same kit, so I can actually do a proper side-by-side review, see whether this new architecture is much better at all. Because with the results that I've seen, I don't think that it is, and I think in some tests it may even be worse. But yeah, I really do want to get this tested, you know, like core for core now, with the new and the old, to kind of like get a proper comparison going on, because I got sent a kit and this was what I had to use. So we'll see if I can get some different CPUs. But yeah, I'm going to leave that there. This has been a long video and I apologise. It's also going to be the last video, or the first, no, because I've made another one. I do apologise. It'll be the only video that you'll see here. Hopefully when I come back, obviously we've got the mic, but hopefully when I come back we'll have the lights sorted, we'll have you know, everything will be set out better. We won't have background noise and dogs and all that kind of stuff, banging doors, so I apologise for that. But yeah, hopefully we will be back and we will get back up to full speed very soon. But for now at least, don't forget to go and check the main Overclock 3D review, by the way. But for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Out.